Joe, the G20 met while we were in Chicago. They
Oh,
met in
yes.
Pittsburgh and made some announcements to the press about their plans to stabilize the world economy. Were you mollified by their statements?
Yeah. Never. I'm never, Pete, mollified by anything that might come out of the G20 or the G7 or any of the International Monetary Fund or World Bank meetings that get together. Primarily because, I see that the problems that exist in the money system, being something that has to be solved by every sovereign country that's out there. So to me, any actions that are going on while we have private central banks basically controlling the money systems of all the countries of the world and creating all of their money as debt money, therefore creating the basically the global debt based economy. No, I can't really be thinking that anybody's doing anything about solving the financial problems that we have. And in fact, every time they get together, Pete, I am a little bit more and more put in fear of the fact that they may take some steps that may entangle us further in that international debt finance web. Okay.
The dollar value has been dropping. There has been talk, I guess there have been meetings, India, Brazil, China, Russia, discussing alternate currencies. And then, of course, the subject of a world currency comes up in these conversations as well.
If we ever decide that we're going to have a global currency, Pete, we have to decide it on our own. We have to decide it after we've solved all of our own, internal monetary problems, and we can't get there until sovereign nations are acting like sovereign nations, having their own, money systems, having their own debt-free money system, where the governments are actually creating the money and providing the means of exchange. Basically, I believe in the United States of America solving its money problems, and then using that as a model for other countries of the world to solve their money problems, having all money systems of the world be non-debt money systems, and then we can sit down and talk about how we actually have the global economy continuing then to work for the betterment of the population of the world. So we have uh, the national money system that needs to be fixed first, and then move into the international arena. But primarily, the central banks of the G20 are private central banks run with some level of control by the government, the least of which is ours. For right now, Pete, we're kind of into that mode of the economic hitman goes in there and tries to establish countries to take out debt to ostensibly improve their economies, but they really just improve our ability to go in and uh, obtain resources from those countries, making a few people rich, indebting them, and then you have the IMF, coming in and saying, well, what we're going to do is we're going to help you. And what they do, all they do really, Pete, is they just restructure those debts so that the payments, become a little bit more affordable, but the payments become interest payments. It's no different from what the credit card companies are doing to all of we holders of credit card debt these days, and that is to say, yeah, they'll work something out that gives them more money. It's like as if the IMF is the credit card company of the world, and all they're really doing is taking more and more and more labor production resources of any country into the payment stream of the IMF.
You talk about the parasitic nature of the debt money system in these third world countries. But since they've had central banks and since they've had a debt money system and since they've had the influence of the World Bank and the IMF, haven't infant mortality rates gone down? Haven't lifespans gone up in those countries?
Actually, that's how they're selling it. All those improvements are happening despite the fact that many of those countries have had to increase their debts to the point where they've become workout countries. They've become restructuring countries. They've become countries that have had to go back in and work out a deal for their repayment schedule back to well, either their original debtor nation or the IMF if they're working it out. I go all the way back to 1944, Pete, and I keep thinking to myself, if instead of us coming up with fractional reserve banking, the international, monetary fund and debt money as the structure we're going to impose on the world. If instead of that we actually had at that point gone through, the Chicago plan, we had a debt-free money system. We're going to put that model out there, Pete. Then those countries, those same countries, the countries that have what? The people and the resources. What did my dad say? It's not the means of production, it's the people, the resources, and the money. And if we had a model that we could have provided to them to develop their own money system, their own debt free money system, so that they could internally have developed those resources for only their own benefit, okay? And yeah, they would have sold them off to the world because the world needed those resources or wanted those resources, but it would have been on their own terms, Pete, okay? They never would have gotten into any of those workout deals with the IMF. They would have been so much better off, Pete. The investments that they would have made in their health and education systems, Pete, would have been so much better for them in the long term. It kind of boggles my mind sometimes, that road not taken, Pete, and it's all still available to us. We just need to start to make the changes in our own monetary system right now. Those changes that are being proposed now by Congressman Dennis Kucinich, we get those in place in this country, we are going to actually change the world.